Alrighty, guys. This week we have George Andersch. I know I butchered his last name, but I know I got his first name right. He is the owner of Fargo Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. He is the main coach there, and I'm very thankful he came on the podcast. He's a modern day Highlander, moving around throughout his life, but always finding a way to better himself, diving all in the situation he is presented and making the most of it. I envy the hell out of it after recording the podcast with George, and I freaking loved recording this episode. In a way, his ability to always be searching for new things and bettering himself is something I find very similar in myself, whether other people see that or not. But enjoy the episode. Give the whole thing a listen because it only gets better throughout the whole show. And if you want to support George and his family, come try out Brazilian Jiu Jitsu over at Fargo BJJ. All the links and whatnot are in the show notes, are linked to Spotify, Apple Music, or on my Instagram post. Thank you guys. Enjoy the show. Give it a share if you like it, and have a great, fantastic day. Thank you. How's it going?
Good.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How was open mat?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good. We're trying to, everything slows down with the holidays and stuff,
Yeah.
but trying to get it back going.
Okay.
After January, it'll pack again.
Yeah. Do we, so I'm used to like the CrossFit space where we get a bunch of new people joining at the New Year for New Year's resolutions. Do you get the same thing for memberships?
Yeah, I mean, there is that. I don't really advertise to that.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really advertise much at all. It's
Yeah.
more word of mouth than anything. But so I would imagine that it's probably not the first thing people think of as a New Year's resolution. So the gyms probably get that much more than we do, but there is a bit of that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of a hard thing because you never know if those people are going to stay or leave every year. Not always some of them stay, a lot of them leave, but we definitely see that uptick as well. But for the podcast, introduce yourself, kind of like who you are, where you're from.
My name is George Andersch. I'm the owner of Fargo Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and Kickboxing, along with my wife, Sarah. I'm originally from New Jersey, born in Perth Amboy. So I grew up in that New York City area, like right across the river from New York. And but I left there fairly early. I left there when I was 23 and I never really went back. So I've just been on the road basically since then. Ended up in Fargo, and here you go.
Gotcha. Well, let's go kind of way back to when you were growing up. Were you into sports? Were you what was your thing growing up in high school or elementary?
Well, I was into playing sports, but and music as well. But like when I was really young, like elementary school, I had the kind of parents that just put you in everything.
Okay.
So I grew up playing every kind of sport. Baseball. I was a competitive gymnast. I started when I was 7 years old. I broke my arm when I was a baby. So my parents started me in gymnastics first when I was very little because they thought it would be a good way to rehab my arm and build the strength back up. And I wound up staying in gymnastics all the way up until I think I graduated high school. And I was competitive in that. And I played baseball, Little League baseball. It's big in the city and stuff. I played that for years. Played hockey. Somehow I got involved in ice hockey and street hockey.
Okay.
Because the guys on my street there was older kids that played hockey. Seriously, I don't know if they played in college or what they were doing, but they were always out practicing. We had an alley with there's a vacant lot that in the middle of my block that everybody just used for hockey, believe it or not. And I'd watch the older kids play, and then my generation came up watching them, so we took over the lot, when they were gone.
Right on.
And I played roller hockey. I actually played in the USA Roller Hockey League up until I was 30.
Oh, damn.
Because you can do that anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's just amateur hockey, but you can just get on a team and play. And that was fun.
What was it like? I think the outside view of gymnastics to most people is very competitive and very strict training. Was that the type of training you were doing early on?
I mean, I wasn't in a Olympic prep gymnastics team or anything like that. I was in a pretty decent local, regional kind of school. They've actually grown to be much larger these days. Central Jersey Dance and Gymnastics, it's called now. It wasn't called that back then, but they're like a pretty big force in theater and gymnastics and stuff now. But they were just like a couple that was running like in a small shop, and then they eventually grew a little bit while I was there. But just competitive, like regional kind of stuff. That's all.
Yeah.
Nothing major. Not gonna go to the Olympics or anything.
Gotcha. What about school? Was like growing up in great school your thing? Did you enjoy school?
Nope, horrible.
Horrible in school.
Horrible. I hated school. Like I didn't really do that well in school, but not because like I was dumb or anything, but I don't know why. I wasn't into school. I was more interested in like music, especially once I got to like middle school and high school. I started playing guitar when I was like 12 or so.
Okay.
And that's all I wanted to be, was a rock star. My mom, I always tell the joke that my mom ruined me early on, because when I was like 8 or 10 years old, she introduced me to her record collection. She was really into music and had an awesome record collection, like all the greats, of the 50s, 60s, 70s, like all the great bands, Kiss, Boston, Kansas, all that. And she just turned me on to her record collection, and I saw that Kiss Destroyer album for the first time, and I was like, that's it. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And it was guitar for like the next 10 years.
So what did that path look like? So you said early on, it's like 7th grade, right? Or that's when you got into music in middle school, or I would assume.
Well, even before that, I always liked listening to records and my mom's records and stuff like that. And my mom could turn me on to music early. Yeah. And I didn't start playing an instrument myself until I was like around 12 or so. I don't remember exactly when I got my first guitar, but. How
did that go? So were you like just slaying after a few years? Were you like all in on it?
Well, it was, I didn't have really any friends when I was younger. I had one friend that was the kid that lived across the street, Tony, and he bought a guitar. Same time I did. Okay. Same day. I actually got it because his uncle drove a truck, and it was like one of these, truck off the back of a truck kind of deals. Okay. He drove the truck up onto my little one-way street, and all the kids came running out, and he was just like handing stuff off the back, and we were just throwing cash. Okay. And I still have that guitar to this day. It was a Westbury Custom Deluxe, and there was twin guitars. There were two made exactly the same, and my friend Tony, he got the other one.
Oh, wow.
And like I said, I still have that guitar, and it was awesome. It's actually a really nice guitar.
That's awesome.
But we just bought it off the back of the truck, and I just started learning how to play. I never really took lessons formally. I took lessons occasionally over my career, but I didn't start that way. I just started listening to records and just started trying to copy it. And this is before the internet or anything like that. And there was not a lot of guitar, magazines and things like that to learn. You just whatever, just pick it up.
So you just figured it out by listening. That's pretty incredible. I was never musically gifted in it. I had a trumpet. That was the only instrument I ever played.
I played trumpet too.
And it was pretty awful.
Yeah, I didn't like it either.
I think I could hit an F sharp, and that was the only note I was confident in. And I was very happy about it. But no, music was not my thing. Love it. That's the kind of music I grew up with as well. My dad was super into heavy rock, especially from like his powerlifting, bodybuilding days in the gym. And so some of my earliest memories are just blasting classic rock, driving down Main Avenue in our old Jeep. And so, or not 13th Avenue, when there was like distance between West Fargo and Fargo. But no, that's awesome. So going through high school, were you able to bring that, or maybe middle school too, were you able to bring your guitar into like band and whatnot as well?
No, not in middle school. Like I didn't really play in band in school. Like I wasn't like a school band guy. I started when I was in grade school. I played like brass and stuff like that, but that didn't fly for me very well. I didn't do very well. And once I got into playing guitar, I didn't really know anybody that played guitar, or was into it like I was. So like I just used to sit home and play for hours and hours and hours. And I'd even wait till my parents left. I'd cut out of school just so I could get like 8 uninterrupted hours of playing. Damn. That's kind of like how I was. Yeah. And I didn't really meet other musicians and start making friends until I was like in 10th grade.
Okay.
You know, like it wasn't until high school, and then I kind of discovered the musician crowd, and there was other guys that were not musician crowd like band, but the other like rockers, guys that were playing guitar and bass and drums and that liked heavy metal and stuff like that. Because you got to remember, this is like the late 1970s, early 1980s, and like it wasn't popular to like listen to that kind of music because nobody's parents wanted you to listen to like, you know, Judas Priest and like all this, you know, kind of stuff because like, you know, you're gonna go to hell and it's all this Satan stuff, and like everybody thought that everybody did drugs and drank, and that's kind of true actually. That's that was the scene, but yeah, like it was just not very common. It wasn't popular. So, and I think that's kind of like what even attracted me to it more. Was it was this thing that nobody really knew anything about, and nobody really wanted anybody to be a part of it, and everybody was always fighting against it, you know, lyrics and Satan and all this kind of stuff. So it was like, man, you want a teenage kid to be attracted to something, but that's exactly what you do. Tell them they can't do it and make it look evil.
Exactly. Like, I don't know if you ever seen Rock of Ages. It's like a musical movie, whatever.
I heard of it. I don't think
it sounds exactly like that. It's just moms protesting rock and roll in LA.
Yeah, it's real. I mean, that was real. I remember when the PRC started and lyric censorship, and when they started putting stickers on labels on records and stuff, and it was weird. It just seems weird. Yeah. But what are you gonna do?
So you were all in on guitar, and 10th grade you started finding other musicians. Did you start a band or anything like that?
I played alone most of the time because like I didn't really have the confidence. Okay. Because like I said, I didn't really know anybody else, so I didn't realize where I was in the scheme of things about how I played. I just played along with records in my house, and I had my one friend next door that played Tony, and we would play together sometimes. Just us. He was just my next door neighbor, and he was like my only friend for most of my early childhood. Okay. And I hooked up with. I met other musicians. In like in this one class I had, it was like I think it was American government class, and like I wasn't doing very well in school, so I got kind of like, I was a sophomore, but I think I got put in with a bunch of freshmen to take this American government class, and I remember the teacher, Mr. Sawicki, and it was all these long-haired dudes, and we kind of like all found each other in that class, and Mr. Sawicki was super cool teacher, kind of like facilitated our creativity, and you know, didn't really kind of follow the class, you know, and all we did was talk about music, and we all got together, and that was basically my group of friends until I left for the Army when I was 23. And to this day I'm still in touch with all of them. That was like where that main group in that class turned out to be the core of like my group of friends that I basically hung out with forever after that. Wow. And they all played drums and bass and everything like that, and I didn't play in a band with them particularly, but we were always together. We all went and did bands, and we always supported each other. That's super cool. It was a super supportive group, and it was like the kind of thing that like I never had before, you know. So like it was pretty cool.
That's awesome. So did any of them go down the same path you did into the Army?
No. It's very rare that you get that rocker crowd to go into the military. Like I joined the military. I was always kind of into like the military too. I always found it amazing. Yeah. It was just interesting. I really liked like all those old like movies, and I was like infatuated with like World War II Europe. So I used to love like The Longest Day and The Bridge Too Far, and that's what got me interested in like the 82nd Airborne Division, because they were a very predominant unit in World War II Europe. And when I wound up joining the Army, that's where I wanted to go. I wound up going to the 82nd, but before that, what got me to go into the Army was Desert Storm happened in 91. Okay. So Desert Storm happened in 91, and there was a big rush to everybody wanting to join the Army. I don't know. It was just a weird time. You know?
So was it kind of like, so I barely remember 9/11, but during 9/11, there was a mad rush of people joining to serve.
Similar.
So similar than back then as well. So between high school and, you said you're 23 when you joined?
I joined the Army in 23. When I was 23. Yeah. That was 91, yeah.
So what kind of happened between those years?
Well, I graduated, and I basically was just in the music scene. Okay. I eventually got into a band, and was doing pretty well. I put out a couple of recordings. We made a couple of, independent recordings, and I was touring around with a lot of big time bands. I was an opening act for a lot of major bands during that time, and that was like we didn't really realize it then, but that was like kind of like the golden age of metal. That mid late 80s. in New York City. That was like the happening time for like metal and hardcore and things like that. And all the great clubs were coming out were like in New York and everything like that. So that was just a regular life for me. I was just playing those clubs. I was opening for a lot of bands and just living life, man. And it was good.
So were you touring around the New York City area? Or?
Yeah, like the Upper East Coast.
Okay.
So like New York, New Jersey, like Virginia.
Right on.
Area.
So were you supporting yourself just in the band, or are you working part-time jobs and kind of living that dirtbag life?
Well, there wasn't a lot of support back in those days. Like you weren't making a lot of money. You played because you wanted to.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would just work like crappy jobs,
okay.
and, you know, with my friends, and then we would get fired, and we go find somewhere else to work together, and like goof off and get fired, and we like the gas stations, working like midnight shift in the gas stations, like on the interstate, was like the big job that we all did. But I worked in, you know, just strip mall stores, you know, whatever, you know, like I didn't care, you know, I just wanted to get something, just enough to be able to. Well, I was living at home, so like I never left home.
Gotcha.
You know, I lived at home until I left for the Army at 23.
Okay.
So I had pretty cool parents that were were fine with me living at home, and I just you know, did my thing, went out, and lived the rock life, man. You know, just played shows, and when I wasn't playing, we were practicing. When I wasn't practicing, I was out at shows, you know, rubbing elbows or. I worked in a lot of clubs for other bands too, you know, like setting up or doing security for the stage and stuff like that. Because I was already kind of weightlifting and stuff like that, so I was already starting to get a little bigger.
Okay.
So I would be able to pulling like a metal security
job
or something, or taking tickets at a door or something.
Gotcha. So going through high school, did you get pretty bulky in gymnastics, or
no?
Fairly,
as a matter of fact, I graduated high school at like 135 pounds.
Okay.
Like 6'2".
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I was a beanpole.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't really get bulky from so when I say bigger, I'm saying from like a musician's perspective. You know, not like
not like a bodybuilder,
not like a modern day Instagram guy's perspective. It was more like you know, I look like a dude who did sports, and I wasn't completely tiny.
Okay.
You know, so I was and I was really tall, so you know, you put on a lot of sweatshirts and you look kind of bigger than you are, and you can pull it off. But I didn't gain like real muscle until like I got really into bodybuilding later, and then when I was in the military for years, and it wasn't until like the mid to late 80s when I like really peaked at being as big as I was ever going to be.
Okay, so 23, you joined the military. What year was that?
91.
Okay. And then what did that route look like for you? So I'm assuming you go right into basic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I went into basic training, and it's just basic, you know, like and it was funny because like it was interesting because so many people joined in 91 for Desert Storm that there was a big gap from the time I joined to the time I went in. I joined when Desert Storm kicked off, which was the beginning of the summer, but I didn't even get to leave for basic until September. Okay. And Desert Storm happened so fast that by the time I was out of basic, it was over.
Yeah.
So now I'm in the Army with nothing to do. And the 90s, I don't know if you remember the 90s were very slow militarily for the United States. We didn't really do anything the entire decade. And actually Desert Storm was the first military conflict that the U.S. was in since Vietnam. So like that's what the big excitement was. So, and there wasn't a lot of advancement in the military because the military I joined in 91 was basically the Army that was in Vietnam. Equipment, tactics, you know, the equipment. I used all the Vietnam era equipment, you know, the same style and everything. After Desert Storm happened, there was some evolution in tactics and things like that. But and then when the towers went down, you know, you could see like the Army, the military I joined in 91 was the same military that was in Vietnam like 20 years before. The military that is in, like when the towers went down, like 20 years now, the military of today is completely different than the military that like when the towers went down. Yeah. The evolution like just was driven like hard, and the lessons learned were hard because Desert Storm was very easy as far as conflicts go. There wasn't a lot of like really important lessons learned in that. The towers going down in the last 20 years in the Middle East now, that was much more difficult. That was very hard. You know, I don't know if people realize like how difficult of a campaign militarily that kind of warfare is, and you know, a lot of people losing their lives, a lot of people getting hurt, a lot of things have to be upgraded, a lot of tactics, a lot of lessons learned, and technology increased incredibly fast. Like I said, everything is different now. Like I wouldn't recognize the military now if I went back in there. It'd be crazy.
So how long were you in the military for?
About 8 years.
8 years?
So from 91 to 98.
Oh, so you were out before.
Yeah, I was out before that. I was out a couple of years before the towers came down. I was already like waist deep into jiu-jitsu when the towers went down.
Okay, so you're in the military for 8 years. Did you ever, what were like some of your like fondest memories of serving?
Actually, my best memories are just traveling to all the places I've been, because I traveled a lot. I didn't just stay in one spot. Like a lot of people will like go to a spot and just do their whole career in a spot or two. I constantly volunteered to go to like the next thing. It was like, I was always trying to volunteer to go to a new duty station or go to this new school or go to this next unit. I was always trying to upgrade myself, because I'm the kind of person that, like, if I'm going to do something, I want to be like the world champion at it. I don't want to just. So I was always pushing myself closer to that tip of the spear as I could. So like when I first got in, I got sent to a jungle warfare unit, which is a leg unit. We call it a leg unit. It's not airborne, so you got to walk everywhere. It was like a helicopters, and it was very, very Vietnam-y. It was the last. It was the 7th Infantry Division. It was the last real jungle warfare Vietnam style unit that the United States had. But I was only in there for a few months because Clinton became president right after I got there. And he immediately started deactivating units, making the military smaller. So that unit got shut down. And then I went overseas to Europe. And I was in a training battalion for a couple of years there, which a lot of people don't like being in because it's non-deployable. But I actually really enjoyed my time there, because it was I learned a lot of really good field craft, that more than I learned anywhere else, to be honest with you. So like we were in the field a lot, and we were setting up training scenarios for all the other UN countries. Okay. So because it was a UN post, it wasn't an American base. Yeah. So it was a huge training area, and what we would do is just do these 30-day rotations where all these armies from other countries would come in, and we would train them and run them through scenarios for 30 days. They'd live out in the field, and we would just do all these scenarios based on what was happening in the world or what they wanted to work on or whatever. And we would just run these scenarios, and it would just, like, as one unit was in, another unit was in the prep stage, and they would come out, and the next unit would go in, and we'd run an operation on them, just back to back to back to back.
So a lot of different stuff.
A lot of field craft, a lot of different scenarios. Yeah. So that's what makes it. That's what made it interesting to me, because if you don't want to be in the field 3 weeks out of the month, it's a terrible place. Yeah. And it was very small. It was almost like an outpost in the middle of the mountains. It wasn't like a base. It was in Bavaria, the Bavarian Alps, which is southeastern Germany, right next to the Czechoslovakian border area.
But it was beautiful.
Oh, man, it scenery wise, it was incredibly beautiful. Yeah.
I was just
rough terrain to be working in all the time, because it's a lot of up and down. But
we have at the CrossFit gym I work at, I was coaching him Friday afternoon, and he was an interpreter for the U.S. Army throughout. I think he retired at 19 from it, but he was doing interpreting for U.S. Army in Afghanistan, and he said, like, growing up, he lived right at the base of the Hindu Kush, and just up and down the mountains every day. And he's like, it's the most beautiful place in the world to him. But
a lot of those places are super wonderful. Yeah. Like, if it just wasn't for the fighting.
Exactly. He was like, I would love to be able to bring, like, friends I've met here over, but he's like, I could go back and it'd be fine. But I could not bring anyone like from the gym here. It would just not work out. But so you're over there doing all these different trainings. Are you ultimately in charge of these trainings, or are you kind of working for?
No. I started. This is battalion level stuff, so it's it's pretty big. Yeah. So it's a lot of people. It's a lot of coordination. I mean, I'm still like a low level guy. Okay. And when I got there is when I really started getting into more of like the scouts and recon side of the house. So I started, I went to a couple of scout and long range recon schools while I was overseas, like some international stuff. It was cool. And and then I worked in the scout sections, because a lot of that stuff includes a lot of vehicles. Excuse me. It's just, like I said, it's just a lot of organization and logistics. Yeah. Way more than I would be interested in dealing with. We're talking like several hundred people out there at a time. And I am not that interested in that kind of stuff. I like the small unit kind of things. That's why I like the scouts.
Gotcha.
So, and then from there, I always gravitated more towards the scouts and the recon groups.
Okay.
And when I came back to the States, I always kind of pushed more towards that.
So what year did you come back from Europe?
95.
Okay, so you had 3 more years.
Yep.
What were those last 3 years looking like? A lot more training?
Well, I came back, and that's when I was in the 82nd. So that's
Okay.
like one of the most deployable units. So I went from being non-deployed to being one of the most used units in the Army. And it's airborne, so you have to get airborne qualified. You have to, which is parachuting.
Yep.
And then it's just a lot more intense because everything is like life or death. Like everything is. You can be. They call it a DRF1 unit. So deployment deployable ready force. I can't remember exactly what it calls. I don't even think they call it that anymore. It's something else now. But it was like a rapid deployment force kind of thing. So like you had to be ready to go anywhere at any time in like 24 hours once you're on your own rotation and stuff like that. So the training is much more serious. You take it more seriously. Everybody's much more professional than in like the regular Army units, I've noticed. And I really liked it because I like that kind of professionalism. I like being around people who are more serious and are kind of higher level.
Gotcha.
And then even there, I tried to go to even the more elite units within the unit. Like I wanted to be in the scout team, and then I wanted to go to Division Lurs for a while. I was in Division Lurs for a while. That's the long range recon for the division. And they always do. They always have a fun mission always out there. Far ahead of everybody else. And I just kind of like that kind of thing. I want to be as good as I can be.
Gotcha. But it was more of a peacetime.
Yeah, so you don't know it at the time, but it turned out that whole decade was pretty. They call it the dry years.
Yeah,
because nothing really was happening. And then I got it, and because of that, it was very hard to move up because when nothing is happening, no one's getting out.
Yeah,
everybody's just riding their career, and everything is good, and it's I wanted to get into. Special Forces. I tried to apply to Special Forces several times. It was very difficult. They weren't running a lot of classes in the 90s because no one was leaving because Special Forces wasn't really doing a lot either. So the job, like everybody was kind of like milking their positions. Yeah. And and it was just hard. Promotions weren't coming. Gotcha. Because nobody's leaving and nobody's moving up. So I decided in 98, I was like, man, so like I've been like almost 8 years and I'm like, man, like this isn't really panning out. It's not coming as fast as I'd like. So I decided to just get out. And when I got out, I had no idea what I was going to do. I just knew that like this was going a little too slow for me. Yeah. And I got out, and it was only a couple of years later when shit hit the fan, and then like everything was back on the fast track. But
did you ever think about coming back in?
Yeah, I did, but I was already training jiu-jitsu by then, and I didn't want to give it up.
Yeah, because you're all in.
Yeah, because I was all in on jiu-jitsu now.
So was that, you say you left New York, never came back. Was that around the same time? Did you start?
Well, that was 91.
That was 91?
Yeah, because I left for the Army, and then I got stationed. I was all over the U.S. I was overseas. I was back and forth. I was always bouncing around. And then when I got out, I was bouncing around. So like from 91 to when did I start training with them all? I think it was like around 99.
Where was Amal out of?
He was in Boulder.
Okay, Colorado.
So Amal Easton is one of the first Americans to like go to the Brazil and learn jiu-jitsu from the Gracie family themselves. He did that in the early 90s, like after UFC 1. Okay. And I knew about jiu-jitsu for a long time because I was training martial. I mean, we kind of skipped over that whole portion of my life, but I was training martial arts my whole life since I was little too.
Oh, really?
So I did sports. I trained martial arts. I was into music. I started training martial arts like officially like when I was like a teenager as well, because I met a guy in my high school. Okay. He was in one of my classes, and I used to like read like the magazines and get the martial arts books. And there was this really cool store down the street from my house it was called the Striking Fist. It's still there today. And it was like a big shop that had like all like the swords and the stars and had all the books and the VHS tapes. And I used to buy everything and watch it. And me and a couple of guys I knew now I started having some friends, and we started kind of like, we're into martial arts a little bit too. But I had a guy in one of my classes when I was in 11th grade. Louis, his dad taught Okinawan karate out of their basement.
Mm-hmm.
This is like such a Karate Kid story, man. And he saw me bring in like a ninja magazine or something one day, and he's like, "Oh, you into that?" You know, and I was like, "Yeah, you know, it's pretty cool." And like and he's like, "Oh man, you know, you should come over. You know, like my dad teaches and everything like that." I was like, "Get out of here!" And like there wasn't that many schools, you know, around.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, cool." So then I just started training with him, and that was like my first like real, authentic like karate instructor.
Okay.
And it's cool because Okinawan karate is like a harder style. He was super traditional, so like they were really into like developing your body strong and real fighting and stuff, not like all the fancy like, you know, TV karate stuff.
Okay.
And yeah, so that was kind of like my intro to that too.
So you did that from 11th grade. Did you do that
until
after you graduated?
Until I left the army, yeah.
Did that. So I'm super
So I did that
fascinated.
simultaneously while I was playing music and simultaneously. Okay. So I had like two different lives going on.
Yeah.
I had like my musician life, which I spent most of my time, but then I was lifting weights and training martial arts with this other group. And because I'm always getting in trouble, like I hooked up with this like little not so I don't know how to put it. I mean, they weren't bad guys, but like we would go out and get in trouble. You know, we would go out and try and get into fights and go to the park and the park is where like a lot of guys would hang out and drink after hours and stuff like that. We go to the park, or we'd travel around, go looking for house parties to fight our way into, and you know, because like we were just troublemakers. I was the guy that you didn't want to have come over your house if you're having a house party and your parents are gone, because they were gonna wreck the place and start a fight with everybody. But I never really liked the cause. I didn't feel like I was causing trouble as much as I just found it fascinating that like fighting was like this may sound strange, but I found it as like the purest kind of like contest, you know, fighting.
That makes sense.
And I just was infatuated with being like very skilled at like fighting, like, you know, just one-on-one with no weapons. Like, so I never really got into weapons and all that kind of stuff that a lot of karate guys do. I was just really interested in fighting, but not as like a jerk causing trouble kind of fight. I really found it fascinating. Yeah. You know, to have the skill to be able to just handle somebody. You know, and that's really what drove me to martial arts in the first place. And that's what I found really attractive about jiu-jitsu, because I was like, wow, that's really incredible. When I saw UFC 1 in 93 when it happened on satellite, you know, and it took me from 93 to 99 to actually find anybody who knew anything about jiu-jitsu, because I was in Europe when that happened. So like nobody knew anything. And then when I came back to the States, you know, I was just gravitating towards whoever knew anything about any kind of submission, anything. Right. And I thought I was learning pretty well, but then when I met them all, I think actually a funny story is I think I actually told him that I kind of knew what I was doing already, that I just wanted to jump in and I didn't know anything. I got my ass kicked, and it was great. Yeah. And I never looked back.
So I don't know a ton about like the foundations of jiu-jitsu, like where it started and whatnot, but did Amal learn kind of like the combat jiu-jitsu, or was it more or less and this might be wrong, but from what I know is like the Brazilian jiu-jitsu is more combat jiu-jitsu, and what it is now is more a sports style, a self-defense, that kind of what we learned at the school. Were you learning like more combat style with strikes and whatnot as well?
Well, that's an interesting perspective, because I don't really see it that way, but like, I guess you're right. It is kind of like that. When I first started training jiu-jitsu, late 90s, early 2000s, jiu-jitsu encompassed like everything, like how I would fight in the streets, how we would fight Vale Tudo, because like there wasn't even really MMA yet. Yeah. And that scene was just breaking out, like it was in its infancy. Like there was more like Vale Tudo, which was like no rules at all. And then there was, you know, just fighting and self-defense. And like, to me, jiu-jitsu was everything. Jiu-jitsu was MMA. Jiu-jitsu was fighting. Jiu-jitsu was just everything. It was just jiu-jitsu. There was no separation. Yeah. How I would fight in a tournament is the same way I would fight in the street, is the same way I'd fight in a Vale Tudo or MMA match. It was all the same. It wasn't uncommon for me when I was like a blue belt or a white belt and blue belt, especially at that time. It wasn't uncommon for us to have like 4 guys with boxing gloves in the middle of the mat, and then we would do an up, down, out, trying to take guys down who were trying to take your head off with punches. You know, that was common. That was like a common class. Like when I was coming up, there were like putting gloves on and punching in the guard and punching in position, or just having guys slap the crap out of each other. Yeah. Gi, no gi. You know, that was just everything. now everything is kind of separated into its individual specialties, and guys just do gi sport. Guys just want to complain about just doing self-defense. Guys just do no gi. Guys just train MMA, but it wasn't, it was just all one thing when I started, and I think, that's how I came up. That's why I always encourage everybody to be well-rounded, and not just do no gi. You got to do the gi too, not just train inverted everything all the time. You got to, throw the gloves on and slap each other around a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's important. You don't have to be great at it. You just got to be familiar enough that if, somebody grabs you in the street, your first instinct isn't to, grab a lapel and invert the marimbola, in the alley.
Yeah.
You want to do that.
So around 99 is when you started with them all?
Yeah, I think around the end of 99. I remember I started during the holidays, like around this time of the year, because there wasn't a lot of guys there, and the gym kind of closed down a little bit for, I think a mall went out of town, and a lot of guys, because Boulder, Colorado is kind of a transient place, like guys come there for school or whatever, but everybody goes home for holidays. Yeah. And there wasn't really anybody around, so when I joined, it was just me and one of Amal's first instructors, Jay, for like the first 2 months I was there, and I basically got to start off with like a couple of months of privates or very small classes, 2 or 3 guys, and by the time Amal and everybody else came back, I was kind of up to speed with what was going on, and I can just kind of jump in, and get the ball rolling. Gotcha. It was lucky, good timing.
You were, how long did you stay in Boulder for?
I got there in beginning of 99. And I left in 2008 to come here. So almost 10 years, about 9 years.
Okay. And then when did you start competing in jiu-jitsu? Or did you
right away? I think I did my first competition after I was training like 2 weeks.
Really?
Or something like that. Or 2 months, like something, not 2 weeks, probably like 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was right away. I remember because I only knew like 3 moves. And I got 2 of the 3 of them, and I actually won.
That's wild. Yeah. That's wild.
But tournaments were different back then too. Like nobody really knew what they were doing. We were fighting people from all kinds of backgrounds. It wasn't just jiu-jitsu. Like, there wasn't really any other jiu-jitsu around. Yeah. Because back then, like most of the jiu-jitsu, there was very little jiu-jitsu in the United States or outside of Brazil at all. And most of the jiu-jitsu that was in the United States was still like on the coast, California, East Coast, Florida. I'm not even sure if Henzo was even in New York yet. Hawaii. There was some old school guys in Hawaii, but like there was nothing in the middle of the country. We were one of the first. Dang. So it was a pretty good spot too, because all the I call it it was before what I call the jiu-jitsu Big Bang, like the Big Bang Theory. Yep. So there's like my instructor Amal, he has a social network and knows so many people in the industry and the jiu-jitsu scene that you could never replicate a social network like he has anymore today. Everybody's just too spread out. There's just too many people, and it would cause too much traveling. Like when he went to Brazil after UFC 1 and lived there for years, when everyone was still in one spot. It was the singularity, the jiu-jitsu singularity still. And then once it exploded and everybody went all over the world, like all the Brazilians, he knows everybody, so he could go around and see everyone, and like it would be very hard to replicate that kind of like social clout today, So we were very lucky to have him. So everybody, when he came to the United States, a lot of people that one of the Brazilians wanted to come to the United States, they would come to Denver because it's like centrally located. They fly there first and then to go off to wherever they're going to go, but they'd always come through and visit him, and we get to meet them. So I got to visit a lot of legendary old school guys during the golden age, basically. So now I'm in my second life, which is also in its golden age. So I did the golden age of music. Yep. You can make the argument that I was in the military at a good time because I was in that post-Vietnam, pre-9/11 era, which was like a good time to be in. And now I'm like in the golden age of jiu-jitsu, watching its rise, so just lightning struck twice for me there, I guess.
Yeah. So, earlier you said you go all in on one thing. Were you still rocking at this point too?
No, because because I used to practice my guitar like 8 hours a day. Yeah. Like there was a little stint when I was in Denver before I really started getting into jiu-jitsu that I was thinking about getting back into music, so I was playing a lot, and I went and tried out for a couple of bands. And because the one thing I know I didn't want to do is I didn't want to start another band from scratch and go through the whole rigmarole, because in the 80s, we had gotten pretty far. Like, we were pretty well known.
Yeah.
You know, and I was opening for big bands, Biohazard, Sepultura, Type O Negative, big bands and making a big name. And I didn't want to go back to the beginning and start all over again. Mm-hmm. So I went and tried out for a couple of bands. But now this is like the late 90s. Music scene's completely different. It's a different part of the country, which is a different kind of focus. Everything was really folk rocky back then. And it was just not, like, people were not appreciating what I was bringing to the table on these tryouts. And I was like, man, this is crap. If I really wanted to do something, I would have had to start from scratch again. Yeah. Even bands that, like, there was some bands that were like, we're looking for something a little edgier. We want to turn it up. We want to get a little edgier. We want to do this, that. And then I would come in and they're like, no, just get out. Like, that is not, like, that's too much. So I was like, okay. And that's when I was like, I think that was just like 8 months or a year of that.
Okay.
And my roommate was really, he's the one that actually convinced me, and he did jiu-jitsu with me as well. He was also my weightlifting partner. But
you guys were just getting after it.
Yeah. So like when I left the Army in '98, I got out of Fayetteville, and now I'm really into bodybuilding and I'm really into fitness. And I got out and I immediately started working at the Gold's Gym in Fayetteville, where I used to work out.
Seems right for an old school.
Yeah,
lifter.
and because that's what I wanted. Like, I wanted to have a gym. I always wanted to have a gym. I was always like an entrepreneur type, like whether it be the band or doing my own thing. I wanted to do my own thing. I really got into bodybuilding when I was in the Army. I was really interested in it in the 80s, even before I was in the Army. But I made a lot of progress in the 90s when I was at Fort Bragg. And now I'm like 230, 240, pretty yoked, 32-inch waist.
Yeah.
So like I started working at the Gold's Gym there. And for the first year I was out, I did like a lot of the things that the Fort Bragg guys do when they first get out, like the private security contractor stuff. I'd go off and do something for a couple of months, make some cash, and then come back. But I really wanted to do the gym, and I wasn't gonna, like, the Fayetteville gym was a big Gold's Gym. I mean, there was a lot of really successful people there and working in there, and like there was no room to move up in there. So I had an opportunity to move to Colorado to take over a World Gym, if you remember them.
No, I don't, but
it's similar
to
Gold's
Gold's
Gym, World's Gym.
Yeah.
It's like a powerhouse.
Okay,
you know what I mean? It was like that was the big three: Gold's, World's, powerhouse.
So this is bodybuilding, not powerlifting.
Yeah. Well, this is like 80s style era still, like, because it's, excuse me, jeez, it's that kind of like, but it's the 90s, so fitness is, you can tell it's on the air. Fitness is changing. Yeah. And then I went to Boulder to take over that gym, and it was a weird deal because apparently this gym was doing really badly. Nobody wanted it, right? Because I wasn't very high. I was just like a salesman guy. I wasn't even a manager, right? And like membership sales. I was like entry level, and I got to just jump straight to a assistant GM spot if I went to this place. And I met with two other guys from other areas of the country that we all met in Boulder for the first time in the airport, and went, on like a Sunday, and then that Monday showed up in the gym, and now we're in charge, right? And the plan was some like NBA star, somebody like owned the gym. They buy things like that as like just investments and things like that. And I guess it wasn't doing well, so he wanted to get rid of it. He wanted to dump it off. So the idea was to build the gym up to make it profitable so he could sell it. And the deal was that if we were able to pull that off, the company would give us like our own gym. And this was a fitness management company called American Club. American Club Fitness is, I don't know if you heard of them. They're anyway, I must be really old. They manage. They were like a corporate gym management. Okay. Right. So like an NBA guy would buy like a Gold's Gym, and then he would hire them to like run it, and then he just gets a check.
Makes sense.
So long story short, I went to Boulder. We turned the gym around in like less than a year. The guy wound up selling it to some local guys that continued it as a gym. They just changed it to a local name. Everybody got to keep their memberships and everything, which was cool. And but the thing is, they were their own guys and they had their own staff, so there was no room for us. And then the company that I was working for reneged on the deal. They said that we're not going to get a gym. So I wound up quitting and saying, screw that. Like, because I'm very impatient apparently. And the other two guys went off to the next offer that they were given. And I just wound up being stranded in Boulder basically. And one of the reasons why I didn't want to leave anymore is because by now I'm already training jiu-jitsu. I'd already met them all. Yep. And I'm already starting to train. So like you can see a common theme here where like jiu-jitsu kind of anchored me there and all of the other opportunity. What's that?
How long into jiu-jitsu were you at this point?
Oh, geez, probably like a year.
Okay.
Not even,
So you're all in. You still white belt?
Well, yeah. Once I did my first class, I knew that that's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
I was like, this is it. Because I've always been into martial arts. And I've always been into like fitness, and I wanted to have a gym, but I've always wanted to have like a weightlifting gym. Mm-hmm. But being in Boulder was very cutting edge, I guess, as far as location for fitness, because like I guess it seemed like the newer style of fitness was kicking off there. That was one of the early places where like the 90s and 2000s fitness really kicked off sooner than some other places. I guess like I didn't really know anything other than bodybuilding, and when I went to Boulder, I was immediately just inundated with like all this other more modern kind of like circuit training and CrossFit types. I mean, it wasn't CrossFit yet, but like that style and all this other alternative type of fitness things. And I was like, what is all this? How do you get gigantic like this?
Yeah.
And it was interesting because it was my first step into athletic performance too, which is what I would need for like now for jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
Right. So like I lost a lot of weight in those first couple of years. I started training jiu-jitsu at like 240. I mean, I was like a freaking beast walking into the mat, and I remember when I walked in, it was me and two of my weightlifting buddies, and we walked in, and we're like, hey, we want to learn jiu-jitsu. And they're like, geez, look at these guys. They just looked at us like, man, we're going to beat these guys up. And, we were the kind of guys that came in and like got beat up and never came back. But they scheduled me for an intro. I came back and I got beat up, and it was awesome. And I was like, sign me up, man. I want to do this. And
it's so funny when you hear people who start for the first time and like either they don't come back because they got beat up, or they come back because they got beat up. It's very fast.
Well, I thought I was tough. I was big. I've been fighting for a long time. I was already fighting. I had already kickboxed, boxed. I've done, like full contact karate. I've won tournaments. I've won box. Like I've worked private security. I've worked in bars. I've beat up people. Like I'm a badass, man. I'm tough. I'm a tough guy. I think I'm the shit. And I came in, and you know who Elliot Marshall is? He fought in the UFC. He's the head coach of Elevation Fight Team now. Okay. He was a white belt, and he did my intro class. Right on. Right, and he took me out there, and he beat me up. Very nicely. Very nicely, and made me realize that like I didn't know anything. And I was like, wow, man, this is awesome.
Yeah. That's super cool. I remember one of my very, actually, I think it was my very first intermediate class. Professor Matt he tapped me out by forcing my chest or my face between his chest. And I was like, this fucking sucks. But, and Rob goes, well, that was a test and you failed by tapping me out from that. Because he's like, you could breathe, couldn't you? I was like, yep. And he was like, well, you should have tapped. But I haven't done it since. But it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I want to get better so that doesn't happen again. But other people would be like, oh, this fucking sucks. I'm not going to come back. So you're training with them all. Is it like a big gym, or is there not a ton of people there?
No, it was, this was, back before anybody knew what jiu-jitsu was. Yeah. So it was not very common to get people to come in. Back in those days, nobody was particularly interested in creating a thriving business model. It was just tough guys that wanted to get tougher, and most of the guys competed and fought. So it wasn't like we were trying to keep people. Yeah. It was almost like it was the opposite. It was almost like trying to weed people out. They would come in and immediately we'd like go hard and see who's going to stick it out and it was only like tough guys, and it was like at some point in the years down the road, like I think Amal decided, he's like, man, we've got to be able to get people to stay or we're going to go out of business. Yeah. But, but those early couple of years I was there, it was just all about just getting better at fighting and getting tougher. And yeah. And there wasn't like, there wasn't like a curriculum. It was just, it wasn't a curriculum at first. You know, we would just go over a couple things and then train hard, go over a couple things and train hard. And then we would train and see what people are messing up on. And that would be what we covered in the next thing, you know? But you could do that when you only have 8 guys in the class.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? 8 or 10 guys. I think there was only like 20 or 30 people in the whole school for like the first 2 years I was there.
Okay. So is Amal working a different job at this point as well, or is the school keeping him afloat?
You know, I'm not. I think he was just working part-time jobs.
Okay.
And like most of the guys there, either like I just worked part-time because, like I said, all in, right? So I just worked, like I just took like little part-time jobs in the bar at night. A bunch of the guys worked in the bar at night, and then we just trained jiu-jitsu all day. And I think Amal was working. You know, I don't know what he did.
Yeah.
Seemed like he had money.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he didn't, but, you know, he was going back and forth to Brazil. He was going, and Henzo had opened up in New York. So he was going back and forth to New York now, you know, which is very inspirational to me. This is like his journey to get his brown, because he was a purple belt when he came back to the United States. So when I first started training with him, he was a purple belt. So his journey to get his brown belt and his black belt was very inspirational to me, because this is a guy who, this new thing came out that nobody knew anything about, and he had to go to another country, you know, and like, I'm not talking like France, like he had to go to like third world ass nasty Brazil, like, and without knowing the language, without knowing anybody, and, you know, figure it out, man, and just figure it out. Lived on the beach, you know, lived with guys, you know, didn't speak the language, and got to purple belt, came back and wanted to get his black belt. So we kept finding a way to get back and forth to Brazil, finding a way to get to New York every month or two, you know, to train with his guys for a long weekend. Man, it was super inspirational and motivational. And that's one of the things that like I really take away from him, like the idea that if you want something, you just make it happen.
Yeah, for
you know,
sure.
And there's really no taking no for an answer. That's why I get super frustrated when guys complain that like their schedules are too busy, or they can't make it in, or it's too far to drive from, you know, wherever they're driving from, you know, Mableton or something. Yeah. You know, and I'm like, I don't want to hear it. It's bullshit. If you want to train, you know, if you really want to do it, you know, like it's not that hard. You know, so like I don't have a lot of.
Yeah, I like to do a lot of things. I feel the same way when somebody says they can't get 5,000 steps in a day, or they just can't get off the couch. I feel ashamed of myself when I don't do multiple things in a day, whether that's like, because I do a lot of running, I do CrossFit, jiu-jitsu, like those are the things I do outside of work. And I just don't understand when people can't. And I'm definitely not an all-in guy. Sometimes I've always envied about other people. Like what you're saying right now is that you just choose one thing, dive into it. Whereas like I'm diving into many things at one time.
You asked me about like, did I still play guitar? It's like once I realized I wasn't going to be a famous rock star, I basically stopped playing guitar completely. And that's after playing for, man, over a decade of like 10-hour days every day for like 8 years.
What was that realization like? That you, like, I'm not going to be, how did you come to that realization of I'm not going to be a rock star? I'm doing jiu-jitsu.
You know, I just get infatuated with another. Like jiu-jitsu just pulled me away from everything.
Gotcha.
You know, even when I was in the Army, I still played, because even when I transferred to different locations in the military, I still drug like a couple of my guitars and like a practice amp with me everywhere I went. So in my barracks room, I always had a guitar and an amp.
Okay.
So, and I even played, there was even other guys that played. So like when I was in Germany, I hooked up with a couple of guys in my barracks that we used to go play the rec center. They had a stage at the rec center. We'd set up and we would just play in the rec center, and just for whoever was in there doing whatever, lifting weights, playing pool, you know, and we would just bust out songs, you know, Metallica, Queensryche, whatever we were playing, and just easy stuff to just play, you know, just to keep your chops, you know. Okay.
So another thing that like fascinates me, you talk about up, down, and outs, where people they're just trying to like take your head off with gloves, in your early days of training. Why, or what was that like? And like, it's definitely not something we see at our school. Well,
it's because there's no soccer moms and average office guys in there, and back then, like now we have to accommodate that. Yeah, you know, for a thriving business. And it's hard. Like we were training because we wanted to fight and be fighters and tough guys and stuff like that. And It's not that guys don't train jiu-jitsu because they still want to be good at fighting and things like that, but the environment is different now. You know, like we were like, everybody lifted weights, everybody was jacked, everybody was in good shape. Like we didn't do cardio and stuff in the gym. Like as a matter of fact, I remember one time Amal wanted to start implementing like warm-ups and stuff in the in the class, and we were like, bro, we all go to the gym, we're all coming here straight from the gym, you know, we all been lifting for the last 2 hours and working out and running and stuff like that. We don't want to do cardio, we want to just get to it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And you know, that stuff doesn't, you know, when you evolve to the type of school where average people are coming in and they're using your jiu-jitsu as their entire workout for their life. Like they don't work out, they're not in the gym, you know, for 2 hours before they came here, they're not doing other activities. Like this is it for them. Then you have to start providing a more universal experience. You know, they got to do a little warm up, they got to do a little cardio, they got to strengthen their bodies a little bit, you know, because jiu-jitsu can be a little rough on the body, you know,
for sure.
Especially when you're going hard, you know, getting folded up, you got to be flexible. Like we didn't stretch or anything. Everybody did all that stuff on their own. But now it's like, it has to be incorporated because people don't know to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and the average soccer mom isn't going to want to try and take down you or me while I'm trying to punch her, right? Down the road. I mean, that's a good skill to know, but that's not going to be something you start off with for sure.
Yeah. So I've never been to like one of the, I think Jason runs it, the 10 a.m. Sundays. Is that stuff that they do?
No, that's just, well, that class is geared towards whatever's happening at the time.
Okay.
Like right now it's very sport jiu-jitsu specific because he's got a couple of the guys that want to, like a couple of the people that are interested in MMA, in order to fight for Jason and the team, for Jason as a coach and the Fargo BJJ team in general. Like we don't want just MMA, we don't want just this or that. Like, so you've got to learn jiu-jitsu for jiu-jitsu. So like Jamie, for example, is one of our guys who fights MMA, but he's been off the mat jiu-jitsu wise for quite some time now, and it's not okay. So he has to do some, before he fights again, he has to do some jiu-jitsu tournaments. So he has to get the gi back on, he has to do some stuff, and he has to perform well and kind of get himself back in the swing of things, and then we'll talk about MMA again.
Yeah, I worked with Jamie for like 2 years at Shields back when I used to work in the shop there.
Oh, cool.
Like 8 years ago. But super. I was fascinated by. I was far from being in jiu-jitsu at that point, but I was fascinated by him just going out to fight and then coming back
just come back to work
the next day at work
eye.
with just black and blue face. Like, holy shit, this guy's a badass. And I was into CrossFit and riding bikes, and I was like, this guy's just a different breed than I am right now. But so. You got into doing the fights right away and doing tournaments right away when you joined jiu-jitsu. What did your kind of progression of learning from them all, being in Boulder, look like between the time of kind of like getting your white belt, or obviously you got your white belt when you started, but getting into it to 2008 you moved here? Is that right? Mm-hmm. So what did that time frame look like? That's about 10 years or so?
Like, what's the question?
What did your jiu-jitsu look like then? Were you training pretty hard the whole time? Were you coaching?
I was training hard pretty much the most of the time. I didn't really have a job or anything that took me away from training jiu-jitsu. I mean, jiu-jitsu was my focus that whole time. Mm-hmm. I went to college for 4 years, from 2000 to 2004.
Okay.
I did take a full-time job. People are surprised to find out that I have a college degree in computer science. Most people think I live in a cave somewhere, like small animals. But no, I actually have a college degree, and I used to. In 2004, I started working at a place called Level 3 Communications, doing information system security analyst for it's Level 3 is it's kind of like a big internet company. They own like a big section, high level of the internet. Like network, it's like large network, high level network stuff. And so I started working there. I was there for 9 months and got out of it and never had a regular job again after that. Because I just was not cut out for the corporate world. It was very similar to probably the same environment that kind of Rob is like a Microsoft. Okay. The same kind of huge compound kind of place, you know. And yeah, it's not for me for sure. And and how I got out of there was around 2005 was when the Boulder gym was doing much better, by this time. And Amal had wanted to open up another branch in Denver, the city of Denver.
Yeah.
Denver proper, because Boulder's like a suburb outside, like about half an hour out. And he called me up one day I was at the computer lab, like just miserable. And he calls me up and he's like, "Hey man, I'm opening up another gym. I want you to run it." He's like, "How much you making over there?" And of course I'm like, "I'm making a lot of money." And I told him, and he's like, he gave me some offer that was like a fraction of what that was. But now I'm with Sarah already, and and Sarah's got a really good job. So I told him I had to call him back, and I was like, "Yeah, let me call Sarah and we'll discuss it." And I called Sarah and I was like, and me and Sarah had talked about wanting to work a jiu-jitsu gym. My goal, I never wanted to be like the man. I never wanted to have like my own thing or anything like that. I always just wanted to run a school for them all. Like I wanted to stay with them all forever. Like if I had my way, I'd still be in Denver running an Eastern Training Center. That's what I always wanted to do. And I just wanted to stick with him and be part of the team. And like I'm more of like a team person. I don't want to be like, I'm not like a head guy.
Yeah.
That's how I see myself anyway. But like Sarah got pregnant. Well, we'll stick to the regular story for now.
Yeah.
And so I called them all, and me and Sarah talked about like running gyms before. So I said, "Hey, this would be the good time to like get in and learn everything, and be ground up, ground floor kind of thing." So she said, "Yeah, I can quit my job." And after I just spent 4 years of school and just getting this freaking job, and yeah, like go for it, whatever. So I called him back like a half an hour later. And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And I went in and put in my 2 weeks right there, right on the spot, and said, "Yeah, I'm out of here." And then I started working for him, and then we opened up the gym and just figured it out as we went.
Okay, so that's 2004, you said?
That was probably 2005, I think.
Okay.
It's got to be 2005 because I graduated in 2004. I got that job right away, and I was there for about 9 months. So it had to be around 2005, maybe the end of 2005, beginning of 2006 at the most, but I don't think that late.
So you weren't there for too long before you came to Fargo?
No, because I came to Fargo in 2008.
Yeah, so a couple of years. What did the growth of that gym look like? Was that pretty steady right away? Was there a group of people in Denver that wanted to train?
It seemed like we were struggling, but I don't think it was that there was a lack of. I think we were just new at it and didn't really know what we were doing very well. Like I felt like we knew what we were doing at the time, but like it was never like it's tough because I don't know. Like the only experience I have to compare it to is like my own experience. I'm not in the business world prior to this or after it, So it seemed like it was good. Not super packed or anything, but it seemed like it grew at a nice steady rate. Eventually got good, and like I know that we went through experiments with trying different strategies, and sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't. And I know that he was sweating a little bit. Every once in a while he'd come in and be like, we got to get some guys in here, we're going out of business. But like I said, it was a tough time too because nobody really knew what jiu-jitsu was. Still, it wasn't very popular. It was a hard sell, especially for women. Like you imagine like a woman coming in like before anybody knows anything about this, and they see immediately guys climbing on top of you and doing all this weird stuff, and it's like they're not into that.
Well, we were training on Monday, and it was a double leg takedown. I'm terrible with names of the style of double leg it was, but double leg where you're driving your forehead right through their chest.
Yeah, like a blast double. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had a girl partner on her first day of training, and I was like, "This is quite the drill to do for your very first thing in jiu-jitsu."
Yeah, I've always to this day I still wrestle around with like to me personally, I think that's not a very good class for like a first day person to do in general. But never mind a woman.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult. Like when you're talking about designing curriculum, it's very difficult to separate things and have like a format where people can stage from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3, and you can walk someone up, carefully through things. Like I know how to do it. or I know what I would do, but it would be very difficult to do in real life because the amount of people, it's very hard to maintain. You know, because either it's full or no one's doing it, or it takes up too much time, block space on the calendar, you know, for hours in a day. You know, you need more people to be able to teach. And
like you have a fundamentals course, but then it's even fundamentals to the fundamentals.
Right, like an entry, like an onboarding type program. Like our fundamentals class, and this always happens every couple of years, and like it's stuff that we always have to constantly talk about because like my fundamentals program, the way I designed it, it's an onboarding program. There isn't really supposed to be any wrestling takedowns in it. But like over time things sneak in, or we don't have enough time and you have to push something up, and like and then over time, like a year or two, couple years, it starts becoming more than it is, and then you have to kind of go back and you have to trim the fat and like redo everything.
Makes sense.
So like, you know, from a curriculum building, curriculum design perspective as an instructor, it's something that's always just constantly evolving and ebbing and flowing, and you got to stay on top of it or else it gets out of control.
Well, it makes sense. I think it's, if you look at it from like even just a classroom teacher point of view, you start with this basic curriculum. A good teacher is going to constantly try to add things, change things, tweak things, and it's going to get quite a distant, over time, going to get a distance away from the original. And you guys have to make sure somebody keeps you in check, I guess. So, no, I think it was, Rob and I made it much easier than, he sent one for demonstrating on me, knocked the wind out of me. I did not have a good back break fall. But, I saw her face right after he demoed it on me. She's like, "Holy shit!" I was like, "We need to like take this down a little bit before." But it turned out fine. She had a great time. But the overall like fundamentals, the curriculum part fascinates me. I think we talked about it a while at Open Mat a long time ago. But is that something that you developed? Is that something that came from working with Easton or Amal?
Well, the idea of a curriculum in jiu-jitsu is an interesting story just in itself, because teaching from a curriculum was something that was not done at all.
Yeah.
Like when I started, and it not only was it not done, but it was heavily, heavily frowned upon, because that was like McDojo shit.
Okay.
You know, quote unquote. You know, like guys wanted to train hard and they wanted to go over some stuff and train hard, and you know, it was all about what you could or couldn't do. I remember Amal mentioned one day that he's like, he compared it to like going to university. He's like, you know, if you want to be a doctor, you go to college and you go to college for, you know, 4 years or whatever to get your degree, and they give you your curriculum. These are the classes you're going to take, and it's going to be this, and then the next year you're going to do this, and you know everything you're going to do and everything you're going to learn ahead of time. He's like, why can't jiu-jitsu be like that? You know, so then the concept of creating like a curriculum to follow and that grows as you grow was something that, like, I don't know where he got it from. I know that he at a certain point there, probably like when I was around a high level blue belt going into purple, he was really infatuated with really building like a really good school and a better way to learn jiu-jitsu and all this kind of stuff, because like I cannot overstate that people don't understand how no one used curriculums back then. And like I said, it was actively frowned upon because, as far as I know, we were one of the first people to use a curriculum in jiu-jitsu anywhere, you know. And I know that he had partnered up with Ricardo Almeida, which is another Henzo black belt. Okay. And the two of them were really working on trying to create better ways to teach jiu-jitsu. They were even corresponding with Carlos Gracie Jr. about it. And I know that when it would come up sometimes, like it would be like people would be like, you know, you can't teach, that's bullshit, that's, you know, like other jiu-jitsu guys and stuff like that. And so it was like swimming upstream for a little bit. But you know, it's funny now to think that there'd be so much resistance to that back then. But you know, and there was no curriculums back then, so we just started from scratch with his lead, of course, just started from scratch, trying to develop one. And it changed many times and added and taken away, and this worked and that didn't work, and going from 1-tier system to 2-tier system to a 3-tier system, fundamental, intermediate, advanced, and developing requirements and like, what do you think people should learn at the beginning? What do you think people should wait to, and it was just an interesting process, but at the time we're doing it, we don't think like we're making any kind of groundbreaking thing, but it really was, I think. And when I came to Fargo, all I did was have, because, I used to run the gym for him, all I did was have all the files and all the folders of all the stuff that we did. Instructor training program, kids program, because we created all that stuff from scratch. And when I say we, I mean them, really, guys. I didn't really have anything to do with this. One of our guys, Finney, was really big. Finney McMahon, he's one of the most black belts, runs in Colorado Springs. He not Colorado Springs, Fort Collins. He was the big driver on creating a kids program. Like, when there was none, there was no kids program existed for jiu-jitsu as far as I know, and he created a really pretty elaborate one. And Sarah was one of the very first kids instructors. So she was there during the growth of it, and she just took that ball and ran with it. And it's been developing, to this day. I mean, we have 3 binders this fat. That's our kids program. That we could probably sell that shit for like $1 million, because I know there's no place else anywhere that has some shit like that, especially for kids.
Really?
But the thing is, we've been, building on it ever since this whole time. And our adult curriculum is the same way. I came here and just continued what I was doing in Denver.
Yeah.
And then I was because like I said, I'm not like a bossy type. Like, I'm not the guy that has to be my way or the highway, or like, you got to do what I say. So like, when I first opened, one of the very first things I did was try to create a crew, like of guys, like a group of guys, my first original students. And I created like a council, because I run the academy more by like council rather than by like, I mean, I'm the boss, it's my gym, and ultimately my say is it's my way or the highway. But I really don't make any decisions without consulting the group of people that I really respect their opinions. And, like Matt and Rob and everybody else that has, experience that I trust. And there's been many times when I thought that I wanted to do something, and then I brought it to the group, and guys who were smarter than me said, no, you don't want to do that because of this, this, and this. And I'm like, oh shit, okay, I'm not going to do that, or I'll do this instead, or we'll do what he said instead of what I wanted. Like, I'm totally down with that. It doesn't matter to me. I just want it to be the best gym it can be.
That's a really good quality as a leader, being able to like listen to others and not just force your way. That's cool.
I always think it's lazy, because I'd rather have somebody just tell me what to do.
Well, I think that's, if you bring up the point of you wanted to work for a mall forever and run that Easton Training Center, that was called, right? And from that point of view, like what you just said would make sense there. Like, you just want to kind of be told to do something. Maybe that's an old army habit.
Maybe, I don't know.
But at the same time, like, no,
I say that half jokingly. I appreciate having, being able to say.
Yeah, but like, I think just saying that in general, like anybody who owns a business, have the entrepreneur spirit, probably thinks their idea is like the best, because
I have the vision. I the gym is my vision. Like, I have the gym is the vision that I have set, and like I'm pretty etched in stone with that. The gym is what I want it to be.
Yeah.
How I achieve that, I'm open.
Yeah.
But like, it's not going to be something I don't want it to be. The gym is my vision. It's like, I created the mission statement, and like our I use the group to develop the core values and everything like that. I added, like, I have what I call like my fundamental virtues and things like that. That's stuff that I've brought over from my personal life and just injected it to the business, because the gym is really just a reflection of me.
Okay.
Right. And if I didn't have a council of people helping me do things, the gym would go up when I was up, and then when I was down, the gym would go down. Okay. And I don't want to have that. Yeah. So I want to have a group. I mean, this is just one of the reasons, I like having the group, because when everything's doing well, we're all doing well, and if I just happen to be having a bad time in my life, the gym doesn't come down with me. The gym can be held up. The other guys can hold it up. until I come back up. And then maybe somebody else is having a bad week and like the gym doesn't go down because of them. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the way I look at it. Just the more people holding it up, it means not every single person has to be on their A game all the time.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So obviously we're kind of getting to Fargo now and starting the school here, but Sarah is definitely a big part of that, I feel like. When did you guys meet?
Man, you're gonna get me killed, bro. I don't remember exactly when. I know we met in jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
We met in jiu-jitsu in
not asking for a specific date, but was that's kind of how you guys got introduced?
Yeah, we met at jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
Yeah, which is funny because at the time as well, it was kind of like a taboo to date. There wasn't a lot of girls that trained jiu-jitsu back then, and dating them was like kind of taboo in the scene.
Yeah.
But either that or they were like jiu-jitsu whores that like just slept around. But the interesting thing is, Amal's gym was a freak. I don't want to say a breeding ground, but like it was like an incredibly good culture for people to meet. And he has so many like husband-wife black belts. It's got to be a record. Like he's got to have more husband-wife black belts than any other team, like that I know of. I mean, I don't know what's going on, these days, but
yeah,
I mean, especially for back then to have like just such a good environment that like he can create these really good relationships with good people. And it's funny because like he was always, and you can't date in the gym. You can't date in the gym. And there was just no stopping it, man. And it's funny because I was the same way when I came here. Like you can't date in the gym, but you can't date your training partners. It's terrible. It's a terrible idea because like, and don't get me wrong, I've seen it go horribly bad too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's the same thing with Fargo. I mean, we have so many jiu-jitsu couples and even married couples now out of Fargo BJJ, and even that have kids now. It's incredible. It blows me away. And we haven't really had any bad scenarios pop up.
That's good.
Nothing that you couldn't just kind of shake off.
Yeah.
So like that I'm thankful for, and that's just
knock on wood.
Yeah, that's just a testament to like the culture that we have and the community that we built up, and we don't let anything crazy happen.
So was the kids, you said Sarah's one of the first kids instructors that was in Denver.
Her and Elliot basically, well, Finney McMahon too, but her and Elliot were the ones that really developed the kids program.
Okay.
Or they were like the main kids instructors for most of the time I was there, I think.
Was that like an idea of hers that she wanted to start for the school?
I think that was just the only way. I think teaching kids was just her way to get in.
Okay.
And she just started kids and then liked it. And well, she was a school teacher too, so she was used to teaching kids and everything. And I think she just liked it.
Gotcha.
And it was her way that was her way to be able to get in with the group and be able to give back and contribute.
Gotcha.
Where she felt like she was doing the most good. And yeah.
So
even she competed a lot, and like she competed in everything. She won the Pan, and I don't know what year, 2002.
That's awesome.
Something like that, yeah.
So you guys move up here, 2008. What was it like starting a martial arts jiu-jitsu gym in Fargo?
Well, I'm pretty low key, man. I feel like I can do this anywhere. I could just root up and just go anywhere and do this. But there was nothing here. There was no scene. There was no jiu-jitsu in the state really. And so it was easy, like in one sense, it was easy pickings, it was, I think, and because I was already trained, I was already doing this for Amal, so I already kind of had the game plan.
Yeah.
So I knew that we were coming up, like we decided to move up here because we were going to have a baby and my son was born, and like Sarah, like I said, we were planning on staying down there, but after we had a baby, things kind of changed for her immediately. She all of a sudden wanted to be by family.
Okay.
And she didn't really want to move to New Jersey to be by my family. Yeah. And that environment is a little overwhelming. So we decided to come up here. And I was like, okay, whatever, we can do this anywhere. And I came up, I kind of scoped out the area, and I saw that there was no training at all, basically. And but MMA was really big, strangely enough. Like there was quite a burgeoning MMA scene up here, but there was no really was no training really anywhere. It was just, I don't know how that kind of worked, but, so we knew ahead of time too. So like a year out, I started our website and I started collecting emails and started messaging people and starting kind of posting around. And it was like message boards and things like that. And I would drive up here like about a year before I was going to open. I would drive up here on the weekend from Colorado and meet some guys that I would meet on the message board and stuff like that. And we'd train a little bit. I'd show them some stuff and I developed kind of like a little following.
Are any of those guys around right now still at the gym or?
No, I mean, they're all long gone, but,
Okay.
one of them, what was I gonna say? Anyway, yeah. And like when I finally moved here, I moved here about 6 months before we opened. I moved here by myself. I left Sarah and the kids well, just one kid at the time. I left Sarah and G down at Colorado. She was going to get the house all clear because we were doing rental property. We were going to rent it out. And she was going to come up and meet me later. And I came down, set everything up, got the gym going. And then I did my first class in August of 2008. And when we opened up in September, because of the year prep time I put into it, we had like more than enough people signed up immediately. I mean, I think we had like 100 people signed up or something like that, like
really?
the first month. Yeah. And so we were able to be in the green like pretty much ever since. And then we just kind of grinded up slowly. I was never into environment, and community was like the training, the gym environment was always important to me. And I know through experience that rapid growth is the detriment to good environment. So I didn't want to grow super fast. That's why I never really got into advertising or running specials. I mean, we've been open for 14 years and I still don't think I ever ran a sale or a special, not even for like New Year's or anything. We're already, I would consider us considerably underpriced honestly for what we get. So like it seems silly to me to do a sale when it's already so cheap. So I was just like, let's just go with the flow and just grind up slowly over time. And it's worked out really well because we've been able to just onboard everybody slowly as they come in and keep a good environment.
Makes sense. That's cool. It's cool that you didn't, like, you wanted to be successful. Obviously, you wanted to stay in the green, but you didn't want to lose core values. And you had that set through your group of people you went to that you started right away. Did that start right away? I don't know what you worded it as, like the group of guys you went to for decisions and whatnot.
Yeah, pretty much, because that original group of Dave and Darren, Dave Tofty and Darren Coombs. Yeah, they're two of my first guys, so they're still here, obviously.
Yeah.
Matt was one of the first guys. I think he came in like the first year or so, because like he's been on the PD. He's been Fargo PD for like 10 years now. He's a sergeant, and I remember he came in like the day he graduated the academy. Okay. So his jiu-jitsu career is the exact same as his PD career. Makes sense. And I think that's probably about 10, 12 years. I don't know how long it's been because he's been a black belt for a little while now. I Doug, the guy that was up at Summit County for a while. He went and originally started Summit County in Colorado. He was one of my first guys, and Jason, the guy who owns that gym, of course. So like some of them are still around, I guess, technically. Okay. It's basically the original 13th Ave crowd. Okay. If my first gym was on 13th Ave.
Yeah, I was talking with Joe. He was a 4-stripe white belt. Was the highest he ever made it, and he'll probably make fun of me for not remembering his last name, but he calls himself Captain Awesome. He used to be on a radio show.
Oh, that's Joe Olson.
Joe, yeah. And he was telling me about the old crowd that he used to train with.
Yeah, he was from the 13th Ave gym too.
Yeah, so I climbed with him over at Fargo Climbing. That's why I'm all covered in chalk. So I was climbing right before here. Yeah. But
he's big on that. He works at Darren. The black belt just he works at Darren's store. Yeah, for sure.
I was super fascinated when Darren had a bike shop in the back of Blow Soon Factory. I was like, that's awesome.
He's another one that gets into stuff, man.
Yeah. Well, he's super into cycling, but my sister worked for his family up in Grand Rapids at their coffee shop they have there. But she's here now and whatever. But back, like, so you're going on 13 years here? 14 maybe now? 08 to 22?
14 or 15 or something like that. This summer will be 14 years, 15. I don't know.
14.
22.
No,
It's 22 minus 8.
15. That's pretty wild. But has it been pretty smooth since you have stuck with your core values and you've had a good base to start out with?
Yeah. I mean, we have had growth every single year over year since we've been here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have documentation of like all of our, finances, everything,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, all on spreadsheets and all spread out, and like it's all charted out. And if you look at every year from the time we opened till now, has been growth. It's just this.
That's awesome.
And it's amazing because there's been times when like maybe we were trying to up our game, so we brought our expenses up, and things got tight. And then, there was debt and everything. And like Sarah and I we had personal debt, which was really rough when we first started. So it wasn't the gym as much as like our personal debt that was holding us down. So it took us a little while to get that taken care of. But, several years back, we got all that taken care of. And, we have a really good location for the gym now. Our overhead is very low. And like we're really like have a lot of breathing room now last few years. And this year particularly, and that's I'm having a coaches meeting next week. One of the things I want to talk about is our next 5-year plan, and like for the next year and the next 5 years, because I like to do things in like 5-year plan, like 1 year and 5-year plans.
Smart.
And so now there's a lot of things I want to do that we haven't been able to do, and I want to start looking at how we're going to be able to implement that. I'm going to, need like who's going to be on board, who's going to be around, like who's going to be able to, be here for this and things like that. So we can, who I can count on, kind of, so to speak. And, we're just going to take it from there and see. And like, I really want to, I've always wanted the gym to grow, but I never really had serious growth goals. It was always more about just growing a good community, just having good training, just having just friends and coming in. I just wanted to have a gym where I can come to and it's my friends and it's just my own little society, because I don't like being out in the regular world, because the regular world sucks. I don't like people out there. They don't like me. We don't get along. I just wanted to create my own little micro universe and just live in it. And that's what the gym is. Yeah. And that's what those people are. That's why I've always been very solid about, like, if I don't particularly like you, if we don't get along, if you're not particularly doing well for the community, you're going to be out of there, because I don't want to deal with you, because like this is like my little oasis, and I don't want anybody in there messing it up. So but now for the first time, like, I'm going to actually implement a growth strategy where I'm actually going to try and grow the gym significantly more than what it is now. And that's kind of like where I want to take it now, because that's kind of like my next challenge, especially now that I'm not on the mat as much, like health-wise and things like that. I'm not competing anymore, and I'm not training every day. Like I still have that competitiveness in me. I still want to. I got to do something, and I got to do something. So like I gotta now it's like make the gym like a powerhouse, and I want to be able to have like traveling competition team, and I want to be able to have this and that, and like all kinds of things, So
that'd be badass.
Yeah.
No, it's cool. I think.
We have the means to be able to start pursuing it now. Like, we couldn't do it before because of money or the amount of people we have. But now we have a talent pool that's deep. Now we have the finances to be able to do something like that, to be able to get more famous people in to do seminars, to be able to have a traveling competition team, things like that. Like that, it's all very doable now. So like, it's time to start, doing stuff like that. I think it'd be fun.
That's super cool. I think that brings us to the kind of like the present, right? And I would love to have you on again in the future, right? Maybe a year down the road, see how things are going.
Awesome.
But kind of, I want you to kind of maybe wrap up, do a little, maybe a promo of what, if you want people to come check it out, what you would say to somebody who is thinking about maybe trying their first jiu-jitsu class.
Well, the thing is, like, the thing I like to point out to everybody is it's almost nothing like what you think it is. When people come in, they think that it's about fighting and like they're going to get beat up and it's going to be super hard and they're nervous. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people and they said that, oh, I've been thinking about coming in here for a long time. I've been putting it off for months or years and I finally came in. And then it's like, now that I see what it is, I wish I would have just came in sooner. It's nothing like I thought. It's so much nicer. It's so much better. It's more fun. There's a lot more to it. You know, it's not like as bad as like you think it is, because everybody, like the only opinion that people have of this kind of thing is just what they see on TV or the internet, and usually, you know, TV is just like MMA and the internet, like you can look up jiu-jitsu on the internet, but I mean, there's a lot of really bad examples of what jiu-jitsu schools are like on the internet, you know, and it's not like it's fun. It's anybody could do it. You know, I like a lot of people like to say jujitsu's for everyone. I don't think anything is for everyone. It's definitely got to be something that you want to do.
Yeah.
But anybody can do it if you want to. You know, you don't have to have any certain attribute towards you, or you don't have to be like a crazy person or anything like that. Like it's fun, you know, and there's so many different avenues you can take it. It could just be health and recreation. It could be social. It could be like competitive. And you can take it as far as you want to go in any of those avenues and be completely fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, we've got a good group. It's a great community. You know, everybody in there is super nice and supportive, and you will definitely be well taken care of. And like, you will have friends and everybody will help you. You know, it's just coming in, man, just coming in and checking it out and wanting to do it and wanting to be a part of something, because it is a little addictive. Yeah. You know, it's addictive. You know, people will come in and they'll be like, oh man, this is great. And like, it's surprisingly addictive, you know, and then you wind up spending all your time thinking about jiu-jitsu and focusing on it. And then next thing you know, you're on the internet and you're going down these rabbit holes and you're getting in trouble because you're not working at work or whatever you're doing. But yeah, it's just super fun, man. I mean, I can't even begin, you know, and it's life-changing, of course. I had a joke that I used to say with every time I taught the front desk staff, you know, whenever I get new front desk staff to learn how to talk on the phones or something like that, I would tell people that, man, if I could somehow mind meld into you, like how drastically this is going to change your life for the better, like you wouldn't believe me. You'd think I'm lying. You know, you wouldn't believe me at all. Like the effect that, like, if you come in and train jiu-jitsu and you make it a part of your life and you train like years in, years out, and like, man, it's going to take over. It's going to take over a major part of your life, and it's going to influence how you make decisions, how you solve problems, how you deal with stress, everything. I mean, it's so positive. But the thing is, like, even just what I'm saying now, anybody listening to this is probably going to think, man, this guy's crazy. Like, nobody, it's nuts. Like, you know, but it's true, man. Like, and you just don't understand. Yeah. Like, you have to come in and you have to start doing it. It's the first step.
Yeah. I think that's a good spot to start or end there. Yeah. I'll kind of throw in the Fargo BJJ Instagram page, website, whatever, awesome. Into the show notes, but I appreciate you coming on.
Yep. FargoBJJ.com, Fargo BJJ at Instagram, Fargo BJJ at Twitter, Fargo BJJ at Facebook.
There you go. First, get all the handles there.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, George has left the building. That was a freaking phenomenal podcast. George, if you listen to it, I really appreciate you coming on. For the listeners, I really appreciate you spending your time here. George was an awesome guest to have on. I relate to him in a lot of ways of constantly wanting to better yourself. I envy his ability to focus on one thing. And if you've listened to the podcast before, you've heard me say this, but the ability to dive into one thing and go all in it is something very admirable, and I respect the hell out of that. But I do really appreciate George coming on here today and sharing his stories, sharing his mindset with us. So tune in to the next episode. Look forward to potentially very soon some shirts for the podcast. If you get this far, thank you. I would love to have you guys support some What's Your Why swag coming soon. Thank you guys. Give it a share. Follow the podcast. Have a great day, afternoon, whatever you're having right now. Thank you.